Hello Santa Fe, I'm Carlene and welcome to Living Santa Fe. And today we have none other than our Lucky's Luck, right?
I hope. It's been okay so far.
30 years?
Almost 30, 29 and going on 30.
30 years as state representative for District
48.
48. Now that includes Agua Fria, part of the downtown area.
And a little bit of the south side.
South side.
I've been all over, since I started back with my first election. I started on the northwest side of Santa Fe, the Opera. I've been traveling through the years into Santa Fe Center, the east side of Santa Fe, and now I'm on the southwest side of Santa Fe. So I've pretty much represented all of Santa Fe because of redistricting.
The redistricting.
I've had to be moved around, but I've got a good district now. I feel very comfortable. People are very appreciative of the fact that you represent them. But that's what it's all about.
That's what it is. Now you represent New Mexico too. I mean, not just Santa Fe. Lucky, I know your schedule is horrendous. We'll get into a little bit of what you've done just this past month. Where you've been, what you've done, and how many people you've seen. And
well, we started with the LFC right after the session before the end of the fiscal year. And we had a meeting. We were able to understand each other, who are the newcomers to the Legislative Finance Committee, the new staff. We had significant turnover on the LFC.
Oh, yeah.
So we had to adapt to that. And doing that, the process continues. The clock keeps ticking. And so we had to prepare for a good plan to present a budget for the session in January after the end of December. So we've been doing that. We've been in Taos. We've been in, let's see where else. Oh, up in San Juan County. We've been on the east side also. We've been in Albuquerque. And so we try to take the legislature statewide. For the folks that cannot come to Santa Fe during a 30 or 60-day session, we take the legislature to them. It's our open meetings. We open it up for public comments. We have our staff review the economic conditions of those areas so that then we can listen to the elected officials and they present their piece of it. We have information so we can ask questions about that. It's very progressive and very complete, and the people of the state love that. They say, we'd like for you to go to the southeastern, the southwestern, the northeast and west. And this is why, in addition to being a state representative for District 48, we also make sure that the rest of the state is well represented.
Right, and you represent, well, you go around the state, you're into different economic areas, diverse areas culturally, economically, and that makes it more interesting for you, and you learn a lot more, don't you?
Well, I started as a fiscal person, which was my background in the executive branch. But when I started listening to the rest of the history of New Mexico, I became very interested in the history. I was able to co-sponsor a bill to bring funding to the legislature. Myself, the two individuals that are no longer with us, the late Speaker Lujan, the late Senator Altamirano. We were all involved in trying to get funding to build and create the History Museum, because that's where all the history of New Mexico is.
Right.
And we had some help from the federal government, some funding from the federal government. So it all became something that people now can go and take a look at New Mexico in its entirety in a single place. And from there they can make their plans and travel around the other parts of the state. But they've seen a piece of it there at the History Museum. Started from the 1600s all the way up to when it became a state, and then also to the recent time. So it's a very informative building that gives you sort of a snapshot of the entire state of New Mexico and its history.
And the history. And in your history, too, you had 25 years with the state.
Yes.
As comptroller.
Yes.
Then you decided for some ungodly reason to go into politics, and I remember you telling me that Senator Eddie Lopez said you'd never make it.
He sure did, and it kind of got me a little upset and said, I'm going to work, I'm going to show him. But you know that it's ironic that after all that happened, him and I became very good friends, and he told me and told his people, when I leave the Senate, I want Lucky to take my place. So when they passed away suddenly, they called me and said he wanted you to be the senator to replace him. So I tried, but the climate wasn't right at the time for me to move from the House, where I had some seniority already, and to go to the Senate and start from the bottom up again, just like any other newly elected or appointed individual. So I thought about it, and I came to the conclusion that I would rather stay in the House.
Well, your background too in the state, in a way, Senator Lopez really didn't understand, because he had never really worked for the state, but you really had a little bit more knowledge going into the House. Well, because of your duties while you were working with the state.
And that's the reason that I was able to get appointed to key committees. But when it came to a political decision that I didn't fully understand, I always used to go to Senator Lopez and ask him. I said, what do you think about this? He'd mentor me. So I learned some of the politics
That's right.
of the office with his advice, and very, very effective by listening to him give me political advice.
I have to say, Senator Lopez, with all his faults, whatever they might have been, the man was incredible in that Senate. He knew what to do. He seemed to come into a meeting prepared. You'd wonder how in the world he had absorbed everything. I know a few times I had to go in with him on certain things with Public Employees Retirement Association, and he was on top of it all the time.
Well, he was able to learn all that somehow, and but as you indicated, you know, I would go to him and for advice. I carried some bills for Senator Lopez. The New Mexico Finance Authority bill passed from the Senate. The House wanted to kind of put it on the shelf, and I said, no, let's try and help Senator Lopez, because this is a good piece of legislation. So NMFA is now one of the key financial agencies. It's a quasi-agency, it's not a full agency, but they have a lot of flexibility to be able to look at projects and to be able to fund them through the sources of revenue that they get.
Now, you've passed a lot of bills in your time as House in the House. Name two of them that you're the most proud of.
Well, I had my greatest moment was when I was able to pass the Family Preservation Act, and that it took me 3 years. 3 sessions to get it through the legislature. People were skeptical about the makeup of the family as defined in that legislation. I was finally able to convince the executive branch that it was a good piece of legislation, because it defined the family as being a nuclear family, always together, but also the agencies that supported the family were enumerated in there: education, health, everything that a family needs to be able to survive or to succeed was defined in that piece of legislation. So I was proud of that. Probably the other one, regardless of the other bills that I carried, was a bill called the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. So I passed that Taxpayer Bill of Rights also, and defines the rights that people have in terms of going before the state to be able to determine or have somebody determine the true liability that they have in terms of the taxes, and plus the rights that they have to appeal if they need to do that. So that was probably the two most important pieces of legislation that I carried during my time that I was in the legislature.
What's been your biggest disappointment?
Well, I guess after 30 years, the government, the way it functions anymore, seems to have not been now as effective as it was when I first started. People seem to always, they used to think when I was in the executive, I sure appreciate having a job. I have a job, it's a permanent job. I got a retirement. And so they were proud of coming to work for the state, recognizing that they had additional deferred benefits that they were able to get later on when they retired from public service. So many of the employees always tell me the best thing that we ever had in government was our retirement system. Teachers, the same way. Then we created a retiree health care for the retirees. Mm-hmm. So it's a well-rounded plan that enables individuals to get a retirement system, to have decent salary. We're still way behind in terms of competitiveness. We don't compete with the federal government
right.
as well as we should. The private sector, now that the economy is picking up, they're attracting people to go to the private sector. We can't fill the positions we already have in government that have been created there before. Mm-hmm. So we're waiting to see if we can structurally adjust the salary schedules for public employees so that they can have at least a decent take-home pay, that they don't have to have two jobs, and they can maintain the integrity of the family by doing that.
You were born in Pecos.
Pecos, New Mexico, 1935.
1935.
Uh-huh.
And you brothers and sisters?
Well, I sometimes I think about all that, but coming from a small town and winding up the University of New Mexico, a brand new world for me.
Yeah.
I thought I was not going to be able to adjust to a large campus. I did for 2 years. But California was a place to go at the time. So when I was talking to going to California to get a job, I left and quit the university, which paid a full scholarship for me. So I lost the scholarship, and once the military found out that I was no longer in college, they drafted me. So I wound up in the service. I had to serve for 2 years and came back to start all over again.
You had to start over again.
Yeah.
But you have a degree in law now.
I have a degree in accounting.
In accounting?
A degree in law through correspondence through LaSalle University. So they complement each other very well.
Who was your first grade teacher?
Guadalupe Sena. I still remember her, a fine person. And she, the one that transitioned us from Spanish to English. So by the time we got to the 4th or 5th grade, which was, we all had bilingual teachers there. Then they turned us over to the Sisters of Charity, and they knew very little Spanish, but we were fluent in English already.
Good.
So we started learning the basics of English, other business courses, mathematics, history. So we were very well positioned to take from there what we had learned in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade.